Welcome to this tutorial video. Today we're going to be using Flow to parse an Outlook email and then create a SharePoint list item from it. This diagram will explain our simple use case. So you could have an automated email generated from an application of some sort, or an email from a client or user. So what we're going to do is when that email comes into our inbox and matches a certain criteria, such as title, we're going to have Flow pick up that email, parse it out looking for specific values, and then create a SharePoint list item mapping those values to corresponding columns in a SharePoint list. So what could you use this functionality for? Well, it could be an email alert generated from a third-party system or application. It could be a vacation request, event response, etc. Today, our use case is going to use a fake third-party application, which is going to generate an automatic email alert. That alert is going to contain information pertaining to product, ID, date, and severity. So we're going to get values that match those and parse those out of the email and then create a SharePoint list item from those. So the key functionality that we're going to deliver is parsing out the email and the email body, looking for specific values, and then mapping those values to a SharePoint list. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've spun up a SharePoint site for this demo, and the first thing we're going to want to do is just go ahead and create a new list. So we'll call this Product Alerts. Okay, there we go. And one of the great things about the modern SharePoint experience is the ability to add columns on the fly like this. So we'll have title. Okay, I said we're going to have product. We'll make that a single line of text. We'll have another column called product ID. We'll have date and severity. Okay, so those are all the columns that we need in our list. And now we can go ahead and start creating our flow. Okay, so I'm in Flow now, and the first thing I want to do is go to Create from Blank. Now, we want to pick this email up as soon as it gets to our inbox, so I'll search for email, and for our trigger, we'll say when a new email arrives. That's going to be our starting point. Okay, so folder, inbox, and I'll plug in my test tenant's email address here. Okay, now in a real use case, you might want to use a shared inbox, but this is a test, so it doesn't really matter that much. I'll say include attachments, and we're going to grab emails with the title or the subject of alert. Okay, perfect. Now, the next thing we do, we want to strip out any of the HTML formatting that would come with the email. So we're going to say HTML to text. Pretty self-explanatory. It's going to give us a stripped down version of our email, and the content is going to be the body. So it's going to strip out all the email, give us just the bare bones text version of the email, and it's going to make it easier for us to parse out the values that we need. Okay, so the next thing we do is we're going to add in a compose step. And if I look up the information on the compose step, it just says constructs an arbitrary object from the action's inputs. Well, that's not overly helpful, but it's a great place to leverage expressions. So for example, if you really want to get more proficient at using Flow and build up your skills, I really recommend diving into some of the documentation and reading up on how you can use expressions. And the compose action is a great spot to utilize expressions within Flow. So there is good documentation on this stuff, and so all you have to do is go to the Learn More link right here, and there's going to be a whole bunch of documentation on all the expressions within Flow, and we'll get into it some more of that in a second. But what I want to do here is we want to first, we're going to say, let's go ahead and grab the length of the body of our HTML to text. Okay, and what that's going to do is give us the total length, like the number length of our HTML to text action there. So it's going to give us the total length of our email body. I'll say OK. Next step. The next thing that we want to do here is we want to be able to find where the word product appears in our email, because that's the first value that we want to parse out. So I'm going to put in compose. Okay. And now for this, I'm going to say product, because we want to find where the word product is. Okay, there we go. Now, again, we're going to put an expression in. So I'll type it out first, and then I'll explain what it's doing. So the first thing we'll do, we'll say index of body HTML to text, and we want to find the word product. Okay, great. Now that should be okay. So now index of, so what exactly is that doing? So if I go to the documentation here, I can literally just do a Control F. I can say index of, and now let's have a look at what this is doing. So index of. Okay, return the starting position or index value for a substring. Okay, so let's see. So index of, so here's the text that we're searching, and here's what we want to find. So down here, when we actually call the expression, we're searching hello world, and we want to find the starting index value of world. And if we actually count it out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the space counts as well, it's 6. So world starts at position number 6. Now, if we bounce back to our email, then we can see that we want to find the product. So for example, the value that we want to get is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's going to come 9 positions after the start of the word product. Okay. So the thing is, we don't want to get the word product. We want to get the actual product itself. So we don't want to include product in our SharePoint's item. So what we're going to do is put in another expression here, and this is going to be called add. Okay, and if I go over here, so we just counted out 9 positions from the start of the word product. Okay, and this should be okay. And if I bounce back over to our documentation, if I look up add, it's just adding 2 numbers, right? So again, if I'm back here, we can see, okay, so we're going to add the first parameter or argument is going to be where the word product starts within our HTML to text action, and then we want to actually move over 9 positions, and that's going to allow us to grab the very start of our product name. So to quickly recap, when the email comes in, we're going to convert it from HTML to text to strip out any unwanted HTML characters in there. We're going to get the length of this HTML to text action, and then we're going to come down here. Now we want to find where the word product begins, and we want to move over 9 positions, and that's going to give us the starting point of our actual product name. So the next thing we want to do, we want to get that product name. So to do that, let's go ahead and add in another compose. Okay, and for this, we're going to say, okay, well, what do you think the expression would be for grabbing this product name? So it's going to be a substring. And that makes sense because the entire HTML to text is one big string basically, and we're just grabbing one substring from it. So I'll say the substring, and then we're going to say HTML to text. And now the outputs are going to be the product. And let's just see how many characters we want to get. So if we're starting right here, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going to get 10 characters. So we're going to go over 10. So I'll say OK. And again, let's reference our documentation here. And if I search for substring, then let's just see here. So substring is going to return characters from a string starting from the specified position. So let's just break that down for a second. What does that mean? Okay, so here's our expression. Here's the text that we're going to be going through. And here's where we're going to start. And here's the length. So it's basically 3 arguments that you're passing in, or 3 parameters. So if we look back here, we're saying substring. Okay, so there's the text that we're going through. And we want to start at what we had specified for product. And if you recall a second ago, the product actually started at the very end of that word. We indicated that by the 9. So that's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. After the semicolon, 8. After the space is 9. And so we're starting there, right? And that's what we're outputting from there. And we want to move over. We want to get 10 characters, and that's going to be our substring. And that's going to allow us to grab the word television. So let me rename this. I'll say output product. Save this. Okay, so now let's do a quick test before we complete the flow here. I want to go ahead and add in a new step, and we'll say create item on SharePoint, and we'll just plug in our site name, which was feature testing, and then product alerts. Okay, that's great. And now, so we'll say title is going to be the title or the subject of the email. I think I've gone past it. Yeah. And then, so for product, we're going to grab the output of this product, right? So we'll say output right there, that step. So what I'll do, I will save this. Quick check, no errors. Okay. So now we'll test it out. So back to Outlook, and you can see here I have this generic application. So this would represent the automated email that would come from whatever application you're dealing with. And this will be called alert. And let's give it a go. We'll see what happens. Okay, so I can see the alert got to me. There's my test email account here. So there's the alert. And then that flow succeeded. Okay, so these all ran properly. That's great. And we'll just say, did this come to, yeah, so there we go. So alert, and the product is television. So that worked well. Okay, so that's fantastic. So now we've got to get the product ID, the date, and the severity. So we'll keep on going through and we'll complete our flow. Okay, so let's do one more example here together. Now, in here, okay, the next thing we want to do is get our product ID. So let's work on that. So product ID, I'll add in a new step here. Add an action, and we'll say compose. So this part is going to be the exact same that we did for the first one, except for we're going to change a couple different parameters to adjust the character length and things like that. So again, the same as we did here, we're going to say product ID. So product ID, great. And then input. Okay, so the first thing we'll say index of again, and we're going to use the body of our HTML to text. And we want to find product ID. Now I think in the email I actually called it just ID. So I'll just say ID right here. So that's going to give us where the word ID starts. But we want to actually move over 1, 2, and again, we'll have a semicolon 3 and a space would be 4. So we want to actually say add, and then we'll say 4. Move over 4 positions. Great. All right. And now we've got to output this. So we'll say add an action, compose. Great. Okay, so now let's rename this to output product ID. Product ID. Output. That's better. Okay, so now if you remember, we did the substring expression for the output product. We're doing the exact same thing here. And again, anytime you want to have a quick refresher on the how to use that expression, you can just click on the expressions tab there, go to learn more, and we'll just jump right down to substring. So again, we can see substring. Here's the text we're going through, the starting index, and the length. So let's just work through that. So it's going to be substring. Okay, the first value, so the text that we're going to be going through is going to be the body of what? The HTML to text. Okay, and then our starting position is going to be the outputs, and it's going to be the output of product ID, right? And then how many characters do we want to go over? So we'll just check how long the ID number is for that particular product. So let's just see here. Let's copy this and we'll just get a new email ready. So ID is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it's going to be 8. Awesome. We'll just say we'll get 8. And that should be okay. All right. Now we'll do one more test, and if that works, then we should be well on our way. So let's just say product ID, and we're now going to say, okay, this output product ID, fantastic. And now I'll save this, and we'll do a quick test. So I'll just come back to Outlook, and I'll say send. Okay, now if I come over here, this is now in my own inbox here, and we'll just check our flow. Okay, so our flow looks good. That was successful. All these steps ran. And if I look at the output here, it looks like it got the correct characters for the output. And let's go over to SharePoint, and there it is. Excellent. Okay, so we're well on the way, and we want to just complete the same steps for date and severity, which I'm going to do now. And I'm going to just do that while the video is paused because that's kind of repetitive. But what I do want to do is come back at the end and show you how to add the attachment. Okay, so I finished the steps in this flow, right? So we have product, output product, product ID, output product ID, severity, date. So we'll do a couple more tests and just make sure they appear in SharePoint. So we said television. Let's just change the ID of this. We'll just say this is, I don't know, 9/9. Maybe it happened on the 24th. This will be low, alert. Send that. Let me copy this for a second too. Okay, send, and we'll do one more for posterity. Okay, so this one's going to be dishwasher, and we'll say 5567. Great. 434. Maybe it happened on February 24th. We'll say medium. So we'll send that. So that ran successfully, and if I go to SharePoint, we can see there it is. So the last thing we'll do is add the attachment that would potentially come in the email. So let's go ahead and add a new step. So we've created our item, and then I'll just say attachment, add attachment, and we'll plug in our SharePoint values here. And there we go. And then the ID is going to be the ID of the item that we just created. So file name, we can just call this attachment name. So we'll just go down here and grab this attachment name. Okay, so I've clicked attachment name and attachments content from the dynamic content there. And we'll save this. And let's do one more test and see what happens. Okay, so here's our email now. There's our attached file. It's just got some dummy text in there. ID is 0001001, and we'll send this and we'll see what happens. Okay, so let's come in here. Okay, so it did create the item, and we'll just say edit current view. And then we'll say we want to show the attachments. Okay. And there it is for that item. And if I go here, that's great, att.txt, and there it is, and it'll download it for me, or it'll, in this case, show it to me here. And there we have that. And if you really wanted to get fancy, we could add in a column. We could say choice, and I'll call this, let's say, status. So for example, let's say you wanted to create some kind of a dashboard for these alerts, right? And you might say this is status, and you could say open, in progress, oops, closed. Default value will be open. And then if I go and send just one more, yeah, so I just made one more, and there you see the status is open. So of course, from there you could get into modifying your view, and if this was going to be kind of a dashboard, then the default status would be open, and then you can get into editing all that stuff, and just as issues become closed, you could then take them off the dashboard and that kind of thing. So that's it, guys. That's how you can parse an email and take the values and create a SharePoint item out of it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment. Any feedback is appreciated. All right, thanks a lot. See ya.